Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and today we have Alvin and the Chipmunks. Yes, this is a 20th Century Fox live action slash animated feature. This is that era in which everybody was trying to make really old childhood childhoods of two generations ago superstars into something kids would watch today. And it's yes, it's this is an iconic set of characters: Alvin, Theodore, Simon, and Dave. They brought out a song. They were created in 1958. At this time, it would have been almost 50 years. This came out in 2007. It's an hour and 32 minutes long, and yeah, it would have been almost 50 years old at that point. And the first record came out in 1959, and I actually played that a lot. It's not my record. My mom had a record, 45, that had the Christmas song. I think it had the Witch Doctor on the other side. Ooh ee ooh ah, ting tang, walla walla, bing bang, ooh ee ooh ooh, yeah, you get it. Yeah, and you get to hear that song obviously as well as the Christmas song. In this, you can't help but have this. I think it would have been a crime if they had created this movie and not used that song almost in this, using the dialogue and everything else in the introduction where Dave is yelling at Alvin. Al, I'm not going to yell it because I have neighbors. So, yeah, this just basically tells the story of a guy who's a songwriter living in L.A. Somehow, well, yeah, he has a job writing jingles, and he's just too unfocused to do that job properly. And it gets even worse when he suddenly adopts 3 talking chipmunks. Okay, you know what? I had a thought here, and I'm going to get to it a little bit later. But he also has he's just recently broke up with a beautiful young woman, and he thinks he has kind of a sort of a friend in the music business at Jet Records with 2 T's. And that's by the way, Dave is played by Jason Lee, and the record executive Ian is played by David Cross, and David Cross from Mr. Show, you'll know him. And the guy who plays Alvin, you might know him, Justin Long, just the vocal parts, but the voice is actually the son of the man who created Alvin and the Chipmunks. He actually took over the singing voice for Alvin. Ross, I'm going to mess this up, Ross Bagdasarian Jr. Senior, once he passed away, his son took over. And yeah, this is kind of a big historic bit of character resurrection in a sense, but I should say that they have never really completely went away, because all the way up to like 1998 they were still putting out records. There was an X-Files themed record song, the A-Files. Yeah, it's, how do I know that? Because during the credits they go through each of the albums that the Chipmunks have released over the last 50 some years, nearly at that point, 40 some years at that point, up to 98 anyway. 40 years worth of records, and they put the dates with each one of them. Yeah, it's a lot. So yeah, there's a humongous amount of history to this. There's a humongous amount of just, let's bring these characters into the 21st century kind of attitude. So they take the songs as they were traditionally performed, but then they tweak them with a sort of a pop punk or hip hop kind of twist, so kids do not immediately get bored or confused by the old sounding music. Hey, can't take offense to that, because hey, there was music 50 years ago and there's music today, or in 2007, and they are not the same. And if you're going to appeal to children, who are the focus audience for this film, not somebody my age, yeah, you're going to put the music that they're listening to at the time, or at least maybe their parents or somebody close to that. The only reason I know it, like I said, was because my mom had the record and I used to play it all the time on my little record player. As an adult, I kind of got tired of hearing his high pitched kind of voices. This does answer one of the things. It does answer what happens if you feed Alvin and the Chipmunks. Well, not feed them, but I mean when you give them helium, can their voices get higher? Well, this movie answers the question. What happens when you give these chipmunks the helium treatment? And I'm not going to tell you what that is, but you get to find out if you watch it. I don't know if I'd recommend seeing this unless you're already like an Alvin and the Chipmunks fan. This is not going to do anything for you. It's not a great film. In fact, a lot of it, while I really like Jason Lee, a lot of this just seems really like he's just going through the motions, and a lot of the time with the dialogue, like he's clearly stepping out the dialogue piece by piece, and yeah, I mean, there's moments where he has, emotional reflection and conflicts, but his delivery is very much not, my name is Earl, let's say. His voice, he's very not, his other characters who are a bit more roughshod, let's say. This Dave is much more a straight-laced kind of guy, who, by the way, Dave doesn't really want a family. He's really bad at making commitments. That's why his girlfriend broke up with him, and of course, once the boys get in his life, they really latch onto him and go, hey, we want to be a family, and it creates tension where he's just like, I'll be your songwriter, and creates tension when Ian, of course, who is the record executive who's eager to get very, very rich off of them and to the point of exhaustion. This is very much a commentary on the music industry. It's not necessary, and it's not something that kids would even understand, but for the adults in the audience who have any understanding of the music scene and the idea of artists just not going to their shows, not wanting to do shows due to exhaustion, things like that, yeah. Not recording good music because of exhaustion, and then also getting them addicted to something that keeps them peppy. Well, in this case, it's not cocaine, it's coffee. So there's one scene in which Ian feeds them coffee, and they're just literally bouncing off the walls. So yeah, there's obvious parallels meant to be made about so many aspects of the music industry, and yeah, seeing the artists as commodities rather than people, which in this case, Dave provides the boys when he realizes without them, he is lost. It's a little selfish, but at the same time, he actually sees that he does care for them, and he doesn't want to see them be destroyed. So, yeah, I've told you the entire overall concept of the film, but for the most part, yeah, unless you're just like a big Alvin and the Chipmunks fan, or Jason Lee, or David Cross, yeah, I don't see. I really didn't want to watch this myself. We saw the Road Chip many months ago that was on here. For some reason, the Squeakquel is not on here, and I said Squeakquel. Yes, that is the name of the sequel. But yeah, it's maybe it'll show up again at some point, or maybe there's something really racist in it or something. They don't want to put it up. I have no idea. Maybe Donald Trump's in it and they don't want to put it on. I have no idea. But yeah. Speaking of anybody else you might want to recognize in this, Jesse McCartney plays Theodore, the speaking voice, even though he could have done the singing voice, I imagine. Jane Lynch has a very small spot in it. Cameron Richardson. Cameron Richardson plays the ex-girlfriend and potential love interest again. I haven't seen her do a lot, but she is lovely. But yeah, it's they avoid leaning too much into any kind of romance that might make kids get bored, or like, oh, I don't want to deal with the humans. I want to deal with the talking chipmunks. And it kind of does answer a lot of questions about some of us might have had about the Chipmunks over the years, how they all got started. It's their origin story, in a sense, but in these big feature film sense from 20th Century Fox, which doesn't exist anymore. So yeah, like I said, not a great movie. I wouldn't go racing off to see it unless you're already a fan, like I said. So yeah. I'm trying to think if there's other things. There's some other thing I wanted to tell you about this. Yeah, you'll want to see, of course, in the end, it's a happy ending. Dave gets the boys back, and you get to see what Ian does to move on after he loses the boys. One of my favorite parts about this, though, is there's so much LA in this. The original Amoeba Records shows up in this. It doesn't exist anymore. It's it's a street over now in Hollywood. Amoeba Records is one of the biggest music stores in the country, if not the world, and it's an iconic Hollywood spot that doesn't exist in that current incarnation that we see here. And there's a bunch of just the Orpheum Theater. I've been to that theater a number of times for concerts. It's kind of cool to see it. But in LA, and at some point, there's almost never any traffic whenever Dave is driving. And at one point in the evening, he just comes to a complete stop. He breaks in the middle of the street. And I'm thinking, you're dead now because you came to a dead stop in the middle of the street. That doesn't happen in LA. Unless it's like 4 a.m. But who's at a Chipmunk concert at 4 a.m.? Speaking of which, Chipmunk concert, if I was seeing them in a stadium with 100,000 people, I have a hard enough time if I had the nosebleed seats to see a real actual human-sized band. Can you imagine the Chipmunks performing? You wouldn't even know they were there. You just have to take somebody's word for it. I mean, hopefully there's video screens that lets you see them because they're so tiny. It just seems like a really bad model. And also, weirdly, when the boys are on stage, everybody's like, yeah, they're all grooving and singing and dancing, but then suddenly they break free of their performance and they start running around, jumping on things. People start screaming like you were just watching them a minute ago performing some lousy song that they didn't even like. And now you're freaked out because rodents are scrambling all over the equipment. Come on. It's some things just gotta let go. Yeah. Like this, we're gonna pick tomorrow's episode.
489.
489. We are moving from the lowest to the highest, back and forth. Nothing in between, it seems. 489. Ooh. 489. Oh, okay. Well, hey, we got a short. And this is one of these old classics, a Silly Symphony. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's The Ugly Duckling. So yeah, The Ugly Duckling. For something tells me we already saw that one. Or a version of it. I'm not sure. If we have seen it already, I'm going to double check it. We'll come back and pick another one. But yeah, for now, we're going to see the animated classic short, The Ugly Duckling, on the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that.